Sarah had always been a light sleeper, but the knocking that night was different. It wasn't the usual gentle tap of a neighbor or the urgent pounding of an emergency. This was methodical, deliberate, and came in sets of 3. Knock, knock, knock. She glanced at her bedside clock, 3:17 a.m. The red digits glowed ominously in the darkness of her bedroom. Who could possibly be at her door at this hour? Living alone in the quiet suburbs of Elmwood Heights, she rarely had visitors even during the day. The neighborhood was filled with elderly retirees who were asleep by 9 p.m. Sarah wrapped her silk robe tightly around herself and crept toward the front door, her bare feet silent against the cold hardwood floors. The house creaked around her, settling into the night's embrace. "Who's there?" she called out, her voice barely above a whisper, not wanting to wake the neighbors. Silence stretched like a held breath. Knock, knock, knock. The sound came again, but this time it seemed to be coming from the back door. That was impossible. She'd just heard it from the front. Sarah's heart began to race as she moved through her house, checking each window with growing panic. The streetlights cast long, twisted shadows across her manicured yard, but she saw no one lurking in the darkness. Knock, knock, knock. Now it was coming from her bedroom window on the 2nd floor. Sarah's blood ran cold. No one could reach that window without a 20-foot ladder. She grabbed her iPhone to call 911, but the screen remained stubbornly black. Dead battery, though she distinctly remembered plugging it in before bed and seeing the green charging icon. The knocking continued throughout the endless night, moving from window to window, door to door, always in that same methodical pattern of 3. Sarah huddled in her walk-in closet among her hanging clothes, covering her ears with trembling hands, but the sound seemed to penetrate her skull and echo inside her head. As the first pale rays of dawn crept through her bedroom curtains, the knocking stopped. Sarah cautiously emerged from her hiding place and systematically checked every entrance to her home. No footprints in the soft earth below her windows, no scratches on the painted boards, no sign that anyone had been there at all. That evening, she mentioned the terrifying incident to her elderly neighbor, Mrs. Chen, who had lived in the neighborhood for 40 years and knew everyone's business. Mrs. Chen's weathered face went pale like winter snow. "You said it was knocking in sets of 3? "Yes, exactly 3 knocks each time. Why do you ask?" 20 years ago, a young woman named Emily Richardson lived in your house. She was found dead in her bedroom, apparently from a massive heart attack. But the strange thing was, her neighbors reported hearing knocking all night long before they found her body the next morning. Sarah felt the color drain from her face like water from a broken dam. "What do you think it means?" Mrs. Chen shook her head gravely, her ancient eyes filled with knowledge she wished she didn't possess. The coroner said Emily had been dead for 3 days when they found her. 3 full days of knocking, Sarah. Some say she was trying to get out of something. Others say she was trying to warn someone. That night, Sarah lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, every muscle tense, praying desperately for silence. At exactly 3:17 a.m., she heard it again. Knock, knock, knock. But this time, the knocking was coming from inside her bedroom closet, the same closet where she had hidden in terror the night before. As she listened with growing horror, she realized something that made her blood freeze in her veins. The knocking wasn't someone trying to get in. Someone was trying to get out, and they had been trapped in her closet for 20 years.
Don't forget to like and subscribe if you dare to hear more chilling stories.
David found the phone while cleaning out his deceased grandmother's attic, buried under decades of forgotten memories and dust-covered photo albums. It was an old Nokia 3310, the kind with physical buttons and a tiny green screen that could survive a nuclear blast. When he pressed the power button out of curiosity, it miraculously came to life, showing a full battery despite being abandoned for what must have been years. There was one unread message waiting for him. From unknown number. Received today, 11:47 p.m. I know you found the phone. Don't read the other messages. David's hands trembled as he stared at the impossible timestamp. Today? That was absolutely impossible. His beloved grandmother had died 6 months ago from diabetic complications, and no one had been in this dusty attic since the funeral. The house had been empty, locked up tight while the family sorted through legal matters. Despite every instinct screaming at him to stop, his curiosity overcame his fear. He scrolled to the message history, his thumb shaking over the navigation buttons. The first message was dated 3 years ago. She's not really sick, David. Checked the medicine bottles in her bathroom cabinet. The second, from 2 years ago. The accident wasn't an accident. Look in the basement foundation, third brick from the left corner. David's mind reeled. His grandmother had died from complications of diabetes, or so the doctors had officially stated. She'd been taking insulin and other medications for years, managing her condition with the dedication of someone who wanted to live. The messages continued, each one more disturbing and specific than the last. Count the pills in her medicine bottles. Count them very carefully, David. The diabetes was fake. The symptoms were induced. Her medicine bottles were still arranged neatly on the marble counter, just as she'd left them, like a shrine to her illness. He opened the insulin bottle with shaking fingers. It was completely full. The pills that should have been taken daily were untouched. His phone buzzed with another message on the old Nokia. Now check the basement foundation. Bring a hammer. With terror and morbid curiosity warring in his chest, David descended into the basement he had avoided since childhood. In the corner where his grandfather had supposedly fallen, he found the third brick from the left corner. It was loose. Behind it was a metal box wrapped in plastic. Inside, he found newspaper clippings about his grandfather's accidental death, a small bottle labeled Digitalis in his grandmother's handwriting, and a leather diary that made his blood run cold. David suspects nothing about Harold's death. The insurance money will secure his future and mine. Harold was becoming suspicious about Robert and Michael. I couldn't let him ruin everything I've built for our family. Robert and Michael? David had never heard those names. He flipped through the diary with growing horror, discovering that his grandfather was actually his grandmother's 5th husband. All the others had died in convenient accidents that left her with substantial life insurance payouts. The Nokia buzzed again. She poisoned them all, David, including your parents. The car accident was her masterpiece. David's parents had died in a car accident when he was 5, which is why he'd come to live with his grandmother. The official report said his father had suffered a sudden heart attack while driving, causing the fatal accident. Another message appeared. Check your coffee mug, the one you've been using all week. David looked at the ceramic mug in his hands, his grandmother's favorite, the one he'd been sentimentally drinking from while cleaning out the house. At the bottom, beneath the coffee residue, he saw a fine white powder. The final message made his soul freeze. She's been dead for 6 months, David. Who do you think has been sending these messages? Who do you think made your coffee every morning this week? Turn around. David spun around to see his grandmother standing at the bottom of the basement stairs, her dead eyes reflecting the dim light, her rotting mouth twisted into the same loving smile she'd worn in life. Hello, dear. Ready to join our family business?
Don't forget to like and subscribe if you dare to hear more chilling stories.
Marcus had worked the graveyard shift at Mercy General Hospital for 3 years, walking the eerily quiet corridors while the rest of the world slept. But he'd never experienced anything like what started happening in room 237. It began with Mrs. Eleanor Patterson, a sweet 78-year-old woman admitted for routine gallbladder surgery who died unexpectedly during recovery from what should have been a simple procedure. The first strange incident occurred the night after her death. Marcus was doing his routine 2 a.m. rounds, checking on patients and ensuring all medical equipment was functioning properly, when he heard humming coming from room 237. The same gentle tune Mrs. Patterson used to hum while waiting for her medications. Amazing Grace, her favorite hymn from childhood. When he investigated, pushing open the heavy door with its institutional squeak, the room was completely empty. The bed had been stripped and sanitized according to hospital protocol, but the sheets were now rumpled,
As if someone had been lying there, and the pillow bore the clear impression of a head. Marcus straightened the sheets with professional efficiency and made a detailed note in his incident report. He dismissed it as his imagination working overtime during another long, solitary night shift. The next evening, the humming returned, clearer and more persistent. This time, Marcus brought his colleague, Janet Rodriguez, a veteran nurse with 20 years of experience who had seen everything the hospital could offer. They stood outside room 237, listening to the clear, melodic tune drifting under the door like smoke. "Is someone in there?" Janet whispered, checking her patient roster on the tablet.
Marcus called the hospital administrator first thing the next morning and requested that room 237 be permanently sealed and removed from service. But his supervisor, Dr. Williams, dismissed his concerns with corporate indifference, claiming that the hospital couldn't afford to lose a revenue-generating room over superstitious nonsense and overworked imagination. A new patient, Robert Williams, was admitted to room 237 the following evening. He was a healthy 45-year-old construction worker, scheduled for minor hernia repair, expected to be discharged within 2 days. At 2:45 a.m., Mr. Williams frantically pressed his call button. When Marcus arrived, running down the corridor, the patient was sitting up in bed, wide-eyed and terrified, his hospital gown soaked with sweat. "There's someone in here with me," Mr. Williams whispered urgently. "An old woman with gray hair. She keeps trying to cover my face with this pillow, and she won't stop humming that song." Marcus looked around the empty room, seeing nothing but standard hospital equipment. "Sir, you're alone. It might be the anesthesia medication." Medication affecting your perception? She's right there." Mr. Williams pointed with a shaking finger to the foot of the bed. "She's humming that religious song and reaching for me with her hands." Suddenly, the humming began, that same melodic, Amazing Grace that Mrs. Patterson used to sing. Mr. Williams began gasping for air, clawing desperately at his throat, as if invisible hands were choking him, his face turning blue. Marcus hit the emergency button and began CPR, calling for the crash team, but it was too late. Mr. Williams died at exactly 3 a.m., the same time as Mrs. Patterson. The coroner ruled it an unexpected heart attack, but Marcus knew better. Mrs. Patterson wasn't just haunting room 237, she was systematically collecting companions for her eternal stay. Room 237 was finally sealed after 3 more unexplained deaths. But sometimes, late at night,
Hospital staff still report hearing faint humming coming from behind the locked door, and the sound of multiple voices joining in harmonious, eternal song.
Don't forget to like and subscribe if you dare to hear more chilling stories. The Willows was supposed to be the perfect, safe neighborhood. That's exactly what attracted the Henderson family when they moved into the charming two-story house at 1247 Maple Street. The promise of tree-lined sidewalks, friendly neighbors, manicured lawns, and a strong community watch program that kept crime rates at virtually zero. What they didn't expect was how seriously, how obsessively the neighbors took their watching. It started innocuously enough on their first day. Mrs. Rodriguez from the house directly across the street brought over a plate of homemade chocolate chip cookies, still warm from the oven, and mentioned how wonderful it was to have young blood in their aging neighborhood. She casually mentioned that everyone looked out for each other here, keeping a careful eye on comings and goings, making sure everyone stayed safe and secure. "We notice everything that happens," she said with a warm, grandmotherly smile that somehow didn't quite reach her pale blue eyes. Tom Henderson thought it was refreshingly sweet, especially after living in the anonymous city where neighbors barely acknowledged each other's existence. But his wife, Lisa, felt immediately unsettled by the uncomfortable intensity of Mrs. Rodriguez's prolonged stare and the way she seemed to be memorizing every detail of their appearance. The first week passed normally enough, but then Lisa began noticing disturbing patterns in their neighbors' behavior. When she left for her marketing job each morning at exactly 7:30 a.m., Mrs. Rodriguez was always conveniently in her front yard, either watering plants or checking her mailbox, always waving goodbye with enthusiasm. When Lisa returned home each evening at 5:45 p.m., the elderly woman was coincidentally outside again, this time retrieving her newspaper or sweeping her already spotless porch. Every single day without fail. Tom initially dismissed Lisa's growing concerns as paranoia, until he started working from home due to a company restructuring and noticed the unsettling pattern himself. Mrs. Rodriguez wasn't the only one conducting surveillance. Mr. Peterson, next door, seemed to spend an unusual amount of time tending to his meticulously maintained garden near their shared fence, always glancing toward their windows with keen interest. The Yamada family down the street walked their small terrier past their house at least 6 times daily, far more than any dog could possibly need. "Maybe they're just exceptionally friendly people," Tom suggested weakly, but even he was beginning to feel constantly observed and judged. The real unease began when they innocently tried to deviate from their established routine. When Lisa left for work 15 minutes early one Tuesday morning due to an important client meeting, her phone rang before she reached the end of their tree-lined street. "Lisa, dear, are you feeling all right?" Mrs. Rodriguez's voice was sweet but carried an underlying tone of concern and suspicion. "How did you get my cell phone number?" Lisa asked, pulling over to the curb. "Oh, we all have each other's numbers, dear, for neighborhood safety and emergency coordination." When Tom decided to go for a spontaneous late-night jog to clear his head after a stressful workday, he found Mr. Peterson standing motionless in his driveway at 11 p.m., arms crossed over his chest like a sentinel. "Not safe to be out alone at this hour, neighbor. Why don't I accompany you for protection?" It wasn't a friendly suggestion. It was a command. The Hendersons began secretly documenting their neighbors' behavior, taking notes and photos. They discovered that someone was always watching their house, maintaining constant surveillance in shifts. When Mrs. Rodriguez went inside for meals, Mr. Peterson took over the watch. When he left for errands, the Yamadas positioned themselves strategically on their porch. It was like a coordinated military surveillance operation. Lisa installed a hidden security camera to monitor their front yard. But the next morning, she found it had been carefully repositioned, still recording, but now focused on their front door and windows instead of the street. That evening, there was a polite but firm knock at their door. The entire neighborhood stood on their porch in a neat line, all smiling identical, unsettling smiles. "We need to have a serious talk," Mrs. Rodriguez said, holding a thick manila folder. The neighbors filed into their living room uninvited, settling into their furniture as if they owned it. Mrs. Rodriguez opened the folder with ceremony, revealing detailed surveillance logs of the Henderson family's every activity: work schedules, grocery shopping times and purchases, Lisa's yoga class attendance, Tom's jogging routes, even the frequency and duration of their intimate moments based on bedroom light patterns and sound monitoring. "We take neighborhood safety very seriously here," Mrs. Rodriguez explained with maternal authority. "Everyone who lives in the Willows becomes part of our comprehensive watch program. We protect each other by knowing absolutely everything about each other. No secrets, no privacy, no surprises." "This is completely insane," Tom said, standing up and backing toward the door. "We're calling the police immediately." The neighbors exchanged knowing glances. Mr. Peterson pulled out his smartphone and showed them a crystal-clear video, security footage of Tom taking out their trash the previous Tuesday, complete with timestamp and audio of their private conversation. "Officer Martinez lives on Oak Street. He's been part of our program for 15 years. He understands the vital importance of community vigilance and cooperation." Mrs. Yamada spoke for the first time, her voice soft but menacing. "The previous owners of this house tried to call the police too. They also tried to move away in the middle of the night." "Where are they now?" Lisa whispered, already knowing she didn't want to hear the answer. Mrs. Rodriguez's grandmother's smile widened into something predatory. "We're still here, dear. They became very cooperative once they understood exactly how our neighborhood works. They're buried in the Petersons' backyard, right next to the couple who lived here before them and the family before that." The Hendersons tried to run, but found their car keys had vanished. All the doors were locked from the outside with deadbolts they'd never seen before. Through their windows, they could see neighbors positioning themselves around the house like guards, settling in for another long night of dedicated watching. Mrs. Rodriguez's voice drifted through the mail slot. "Don't worry, dears. You'll learn to love our little community. Everyone does, eventually. And if they don't adapt, well, the Neighborhood Watch takes care of all problems."
If these stories sent chills down your spine, don't vanish into the darkness without hitting that like button. Share your scariest experience in the comments below, because your story might be featured next. And remember, the scariest thing is missing out. So subscribe now, before the next nightmare finds you.